morning. Welcome to the home of Unitarian Universalism in Central Washington. My name is Rita Salama, and I serve on the worship team and also on your board of trustees. And I'm your celebrant this morning. If you are a visitor this morning, we are so glad you're here. If you're a regular attendee, we're also glad you're here. We welcome every person of goodwill, whatever body you inhabit, whomever you love, whatever your age, you are welcome here. We invite everyone to join us for coffee, treats, and conversation after the service, both in person or on Zoom. For the folks on Zoom, you'll find the order of service in the chat. So our fellowship is located on the ancestral homeland of the Piscosa. For thousands of years, the Piscosa have been stewards of this land, fishing, hunting, gathering roots and berries, and practicing their cultural traditions. The Piscosa still live here. We acknowledge that their land has been taken over because the US government broke treaty obligations and carelessly allowed uninvited white colonists to settle here. We stand along our indigenous neighbors as they continue their traditions and to seek to have all their rights recognized. We acknowledge our shared responsibility to sustain right relationships with each other in the land. It's hard to think about this because sometimes it brings up uncomfortable feelings and because there aren't any easy solutions. But we can ask, what would love do? And let love be our guide. To invoke the theme of this service, I share excerpts from Human's Core Function is Love by Adrienne Marie Brown. When we are engaged in acts of love, we humans are at our best and most resilient. The love in romance that makes us want to be better people. The love of children that makes us change our whole lives to meet their needs. The love of family that makes us drop everything to take care of them. The love of community that makes us work tirelessly with broken hearts. Perhaps humans' core function is love. Love leads us to observe in a much deeper way than any other emotion. If love were the central practice of a new generation of organizers and spiritual leaders, it would have a massive impact. If the goal was to increase the love, rather than winning or dominating a constant opponent, I think we could actually imagine liberation from constant oppression. We would suddenly be seeing everything we do, everyone we meet, not through the tactical eyes of war, but through eyes of love. We would see that there's no such thing as a blank canvas, an empty land, or a new idea, but everywhere there is complex, ancient, fertile ground full of potential for love. Every week we light the chalice because the chalice and flame symbolize our congregation gathered in principles and love. If you have a chalice with you at home, please join me now in lighting it. Here in the sanctuary, we will speak these responsive chalice lighting words by Sarah Gibbs Millspaugh. The words will be on the screen. Each of us, by our work here, contributes to a movement of love. May love hold and heal those who need to be held and healed. May love guide more and more people every day.
Light our chalice this morning, knowing that we are
Blessed to be in the places of growing love. May our work together bless the world.
Long, long ago, I immersed myself in mindfulness practices. I did a meditation on a single flower in a circle, or on the breath, silent breath in a group with other people. I found that practice of doing meditation and mindfulness practice with others to be a little different than doing it all by myself. And then one day, someone suggested, we had done a little practice with eating one raisin and paying attention to the presence of the sunlight and the earth and the sweetness of life in that raisin. And then someone, as we were getting close to Valentine's Day, said, we should do this with chocolate. And ever since, I have done chocolate communion with congregations. In the early 2000s, I started this practice. It's the Sunday just before Valentine's Day. The point is to seek unity and connection by savoring something sweet all together at the same moment. Through shared experiences of sweetness, whether they're individual experiences that we share through words and expression, or whether it's something that happens all together, that sharing deepens and strengthens our awareness of the goodness in life. Today, there are times when I talk about Unitarian Universalism and I say the simplest way to describe it is it is a religious way that focuses on the power of love and reason. Unitarians were most well known for their focus on enlightenment, reason, and thinking about the structures of human society, and Universalists were most known for a radical, inclusive openness to love as something that is universal, that everyone can say, someone loves me. Of course, this communion, this eating of chocolate together has other messages, such as tempering Valentine's Day's focus on purely romantic love between two people, putting it into the larger context of a much greater and more powerful love. To open the word communion, which for some is rather found in a narrow, ossified Christian doctrine, and open it to something that is much more inclusive and broad and powerful. The main point is that we focus on a small sweetness. When we do this, we can be open to the sweetness in everything. You may know that chocolate has a history. And wherever chocolate has been developed, or at least the cocoa bean and the consuming of the cocoa bean, it's also interwoven with human cultures. Of course, cocoa beans first developed a million years ago in the area that's now northern Peru, and that little corner of South America. But people, the human beings who found it, the early people in that area began to carry it and use it and taste it and do things with it. And it moved up into Central America, and people like the Olmec and the Maya harvested cocoa beans and brewed them into a bitter drink, which they felt had spiritual and religious connotations. They didn't write much down, so we're not exactly sure what they thought about it, but we know that there were rituals involved with the eating of cocoa. And then the Toltec and the Aztec empires both celebrated cocoa and its power. They had a drink they called chocolato, and they celebrated it as a gift that Quetzalcoatl, the great feathered spirit, the serpent that had created the world and created human beings, gave us this special ingredient growing out of the earth. And it was part of religious celebrations. Then the Spaniards came. And the Spaniards were the first, chocolato means something like bitter drink. And the Spaniards were the first to add sugar to it. It still had the other flavors that made it and the other powers that were within it, but they added sugar. And as they started sharing it, it became, because it's hard to get, it became a special drink for very rich and powerful and wealthy people. And it started spreading throughout Europe, and other European countries started sharing it. Something about chocolate, something about tasting it and sharing the flavor connected people. And then there was these two Dutch people. It was first Casparus van Houten, and then his son Conrad van Houten, who developed things like Dutch cocoa by separating out the cocoa butter and the bean powder. And they created a press to make chocolate bars. And chocolate reached North America by the 1700s. And 100 years later, it became a mass-produced product and eventually has become, through international trade, available to all people. Today, people from Tokyo to Cape Town, from Santiago to Wenatchee can taste chocolate. What is more, the chocolate we share today is going to be from equal exchange. Lately, I've been reading Zadie Smith's very complicated book called The Fraud. And part of what The Fraud does is emphasize and explore and just get us to see the degrading, oppressive cruelty of slavery, especially involved with sugar production, sugar fields in Jamaica. There's one character named Bogle who goes from being born as a slave child to being essentially freed by the British, and the legacy of that. But the chocolate we're going to eat today is from Equal Exchange. Equal Exchange is not just a chocolate producer, but one that, unlike those previous chocolate and sugar producers, was dedicated in their spoken mission to using strong ethics in everything they do, to choosing sources of ingredients that are fair and responsible, that are environmentally sustainable. They only work with those who practice healthy labor habits, treating the laborers in their fields, the laborers in the cocoa orchards, the laborers who make the chocolate to be treated as fairly and equally as equitably as possible. That sense of love for the earth, so that we are not harming the earth by making something that is delicious and tasty and maybe has magic powers that we're giving to it by Quetzalcoatl, right? But also creating relationships and cultures that are enduring and have a sense of care for one another. The great unfinished arc that's brought up by Zadie Smith, going from that time in which human beings didn't know anything about science and medicine to a time in which we now have scientific knowledge that can be used for everyone. There are vaccines that are being shared across the world, from America to China and back, to enemies at one level, and yet are creating a global culture in which we are trying to protect children from terrible diseases. People who are helping one another with our knowledge and understanding of diseases carried by mosquitoes, and sharing with each other the ways in which those diseases can be stopped and slowed down and prevented. It's a sense of love, it's a sense of care, it's a sense of the common good. That idea of the common good has been growing and growing, and that part of the elimination of slavery was to realize that we are all in this together, and we must treat everyone as equal members of a community. There are hard divisions in humanity. There are hard experiences. There are these painful moments where we feel separated from others, where we feel pain and illness, where we lose people that we love. I was reading one of my colleagues the other day was talking about freedom in times of trouble. And he was using the 23rd Psalm. And he said, yeah, Sometimes you're going to walk through the valley of the shadow, even face death. But that don't mean you got to pitch a tent there. There are always people who love you. There are always people who want to draw you out of the valley of the shadow of death and separation. Rabbi Jonathan Sachs said a free society is a shared and collective moral achievement. After 4 months of violence in Israel, many religious leaders more and more are demanding that we forge a path to permanent ceasefire. People who have had a story of bitterness and hatred and fear need to find a path to trust and communion and connection. And that's going to be a hard, long road. But maybe if we find ways to share and connect here across all our differences, if we find ways to appreciate the sweetness of the world, to become aware of the goodness of life, even when life is difficult, maybe if we share that, we can help others find the way to share that and come to greater connection. Bell Hooks, it's an American author, theorist and educator, social critic. She grew up as a Christian, but then she was studying and learning about Buddhism. And through Buddhism, she really became committed to this idea that our spirituality should really be changing the way that we live with one another, live together. Love and spirituality, ideals of love and spirituality woven together in her activism. At one point she said, "The world would be a paradise of peace and justice if global citizens shared a common definition of love that would guide all our thoughts and actions." You heard that in the opening words today. Let us find ways to nurture joy and sweetness and well-being, even when we know there are people who fear us because we are calling for change, even though we know there are people who may have hatred towards us because we question the things that they cling to get those people to open up, to see that we are citizens in the same community, the same desires and the same awarenesses of what tastes good. Let us find ways to nurture that joy and sweetness in all our thoughts and actions, beginning with an awareness of a little piece of chocolate. So now the greeters are going to pass out chocolate. So I want you, when you get the chocolate, now we also have some sugar-free candies in the basket so that if you have any problem with chocolate or you have any problem with sugar, you have an alternative, because we want you to think about sweetness all together at the same moment. So please go ahead and pass it out. And when you take it, look at the package, think about what the word equal exchange means. Think about how someone wanted this chocolate not to melt in your hands and get everything all sticky and messy. Think about the act of waiting for other people to be served and making sure that everyone is together and unified. So as we pass the chocolate, think about these things. Oh, perfect timing. That's really nice. And then eventually you can open up the chocolate. Think about what you're going to do with the wrapping. You're just going to throw it on the floor? Think about what you do with the wrapper. And then notice the feel of the chocolate. Become aware that this is an object that's been created by human beings out of many different elements. And at first it doesn't melt in your hands, but eventually it will start to melt. But at first, be aware of the fact that it's useful. It's well conceived. It's got a little pattern in the middle of the chocolate. You can see the design. We'll wait until everyone has a piece of chocolate. Smell it. What you smell, odors and scents are part of eating. Eating is not, oftentimes we get a piece of food and we're very hungry and we're just focused on eating. To be aware of the scents and then the textures of things. So now I think everybody has a piece of chocolate. It is time to go ahead when you are ready to savor it. Let it melt in your mouth before you start chewing. Notice the texture on your tongue. Notice the presence of the sweetness, but also the strange, unique bitterness of the chocolate flavor. Even after it's mostly gone, there's still that flavor, a little bit of the texture in your mouth. Be aware of that. It doesn't just go away. It's part of you. And any good thoughts and any good feelings become part of you. You can carry them and share them with others. We all did that together, the center of our worship. In ancient India, Hindu practice, there's a chant called Om. And I'd like us to do the chant of Yum. Let us say Yum together. Yum. And whoever loves has been born of God. Anyone who does not know love doesn't know God, because God is love. Let us go with this greater power, this joyful spirit, seeing and remembering and touching always the sweetness and goodness of life, sharing it with each other, and then sharing it with the world. Amen.
And now please join us as we all say together the words in your order of service or on the screen as we extinguish the chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. And now if we'll all form our closing circle and hold hands and sing.
Carry the flame of peace and love until we meet again. Carry the flame of peace and love until we meet again.
And just a reminder, there will be a board meeting starting so that you can hear about what's happening here at CUUF. Good job.
Hello, everyone.
We have
If you want to
chocolate wrapper all
hang
around.
around and chat, unmute yourself.
So I just want to say,